Welcome into the latest edition of our Cubs Recap Podcast, a presentation of our Recap YouTube channel and available audio only everywhere you get your favorite podcasts. In Arizona, he's Gordon Wittenmeyer, my partner. I'm David Kaplan here in our Recap YouTube studios in suburban Chicago. All right, Gordon, let's start with the disappointing news that Alex Bregman is headed to the Boston Red Sox. There's already a little bit of weird comments coming from his teammates about him being there and where they're going to play. We'll get to that in a minute, but 3 for 120 sounds a whole lot better than, and by the way, with opt-outs from the Red Sox, sounds a lot better than 4 for 120 with no opt-outs.
Yeah, look, the disappointment from a Cubs standpoint, from a Cubs fan standpoint, is that of all the teams in on him, the Cubs had the worst offer on the table in terms of years and money than anybody else. Fewer years, fewer dollars than anybody else. They didn't put themselves in a position to even be considered. So if you're going to go after him, I don't know how, when, Detroit and Boston are the teams, not the Dodgers and the Mets, why you can't be more competitive than being the bottom rung team on the offers. That's the disappointing part, when it's God, if you were to add him 1 year, because you go opt out, puts up numbers and opts out, what would that do for this team? They're already the favorite in the division. I don't think
he's opting out. I do
well,
not.
I think there's a decent chance that he does, depending on what numbers he puts up. I mean, when it looked like it was going to be a short-term deal for him, a shorter-term deal for him, where he was going to try to sweeten the pot for next year, the Reds kicked the tires. I mean, they didn't think they were going to be in on it, but they checked in with him because they have a need at third base, and they have a ballpark where any kind of hitter, especially a right-handed hitter that wants to put up numbers, come over to Great American Ballpark for 81 of your 162 games, and you'll put up some serious numbers. So they just checked in, and it didn't go anywhere, obviously. But I think that's what he's looking at, and I think if you're the Cubs, if you're Cubs fans, you got to be disappointed that they didn't do more.
Okay, so we can discuss a little bit here the opt-out rules in there. I don't see a scenario how he opts out with 1 year left before there's going to be what looks like a major work stoppage. Why would you opt out? And I would think most teams are going to go, well, you just got a year older. We're going to have a work stoppage. I'm not paying you some insane number and not know if there's going to be a salary cap. Now, again, he could say I'm staying and he's going to get paid $40 million for each of the next two after this year, which is what I think probably happens. My question is, if you're the Cubs, why even make an offer that's 4 years, no opt-outs, and is obviously far below what he ended up getting? Why even waste the time?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That was my original point. By the way, I'm going to push back on your opt-out thought. I get the CBA thing. I mean, that's why there were so many short-term deals for some of the better free agents this year. Mm-hmm. No question. And I've talked to a handful of executives about this. And yes, they say there's a lot of teams that have behaved in a way that they're anticipating a potential labor stoppage. But even more than that, potentially dramatically new rules on the backside of that if ownership gets some of the things they want and all that. So they're trying to keep themselves in a position to play by the new rules to the fullest extent of their ability to do so. However, the other thing that executives I talked to agreed with is if you're the Mets with Juan Soto, whatever the new rules are, even if they, God forbid, miraculously win a salary cap in the next negotiations.
Why do you say teams, God forbid?
Because I don't think it has a prayer of happening. I think that's what creates the fucking leader. Excuse my language. That's going to be what creates the labor stoppage if they try to do that. And that would be the dumbest, most short-sighted thing that they could do in this climate.
Why?
Now
Every other sport has it.
Let me go back and finish my point.
Mm-hmm.
My point is that even if that were to happen and the rules change that dramatically, the teams that are already well above and locked into these long-term contracts are going to get some form of grandfathered in on that. They're not going to get penalized for playing by the rules on the previous CBA. Their own brethren are not going to do that, and they're not going to sign off on it. The teams that are in that position aren't going to sign off on it, and they're on the management side. So you can bet that that's what's going to happen. And so then what's happening is which teams are deciding that they're going to play by go big or go home, or which teams are going to play timid, hoping and thinking that there might be a big change and that they'll hide behind that. Well, the Cubs obviously are doing that. Some of the other teams aren't. And that's why I say if you're Alex Bregman and you're not getting the long-term deal you're going to get now, you're not waiting until the other side of the CBA. You're not opting back in and staying on this 3-year deal. No, you got the opt-outs because if you put up a good year, you're going to go try to get those teams that are playing the other side of that coin to pay you a long-term deal after next year. So now, if you want to go back and talk about the CBA again, I can talk about that.
Okay, so explain to me then why Alex Bregman thinks he's going to get this massive long-term deal a year older when he's 32, when he didn't get it this year coming off a good season. Why?
Look, it might be 5 instead of 6, right? But the point is that it's longer-term security. You're going to get it. You're going to get it when you can get it. These guys get to free agency. Sometimes they get one bite of the apple. He's trying to create a bite and a half by doing it this way. And we've seen that successfully done in recent years. So there is a blueprint for it. That's what he's doing. It makes all the sense in the world when you look at sort of some of these recent history deals.
Yeah, I don't have a problem if I was him taking a shot with the opt-outs. I'm betting he does not opt out, that he takes the $40 million in 2026.
Well, who knows? I mean, Bellinger didn't, right? So right. If depending on what his numbers are, of course he's not. If he puts up huge numbers and goes to the postseason and has a great postseason, and he's considered one of the big free agents coming out based on all that recency bias, he might try to capitalize.
So the Cubs lose out there. Again, I just, Jed's thanking the Ricketts for going outside their comfort zone. I'm hearing there's issues with the TV deal, that even more money may be coming, less money coming into the Cubs war chest. There's, all these TV issues. Okay, that's fine. But if you're going to go out and make a 4-year offer with no opt-outs, and it's going to be $10 million less per year because they're paying him $40 million a year over 3, you're asking him for $30 million a year over 4. Why even make a move at it? Just go, hey, you know what? It's not something that we're going to entertain, right?
I agree. It kind of smacks of the White Sox the last few years, right? When they were actually supposedly in on some of the bigger free agents. Oh, we missed that one by $1. But we were in there. We were in there till the end. It kind of feels like that a little bit. And because I'm with you. If you're behind on years and you're behind on dollars, you're not trying. You're just not. You're not even competing for them. So what the hell are you doing? I agree.
All right, now they did sign Justin Turner. His wife is from Northwest Indiana. We like to call her a region rat. That's a term of endearment. And she said, I love Chicago and I want us to be there. So he got $6 million for 1 year. He's 40 years old. He won't play a ton at third base. He'll give you, a spot start here or there. He can play first, and he did do most of his damage as a DH last year with Toronto, and then traded to Seattle, where he had a great finish his last 215 at bats. What do you think of that signing? Because I personally like it.
Yeah, the thing is, you've got a DH and you got a first baseman. It's a nice hedge. I like the player. I like the competitor even more. The Dodgers loved this guy. The Dodgers kept bringing this guy back over and over again right up until the end, into his late 30s when they didn't have room on the roster for him anymore. And we can go into all that if you want. But when they were building that juggernaut that they have, he was a part of it. Remember, he was on those teams back when the Cubs beat him. And then he was on the team that beat the Cubs. And then
he hit the home run off John Lackey.
Exactly. But that's where their star rose as a franchise into this relative dynasty that they've got. And he was a big part of that. He was a heartbeat part of that in their clubhouse. And I've talked to people with the Dodgers, and he was maybe the top one of those guys that some people like to call it a leader. I like to call it a tone setter, a guy that makes an influence on the clubhouse. Doesn't necessarily have to be a leader. Doesn't have to necessarily say X or Y, but just it shows how it's done and is willing to say something. That was that guy. That is a good, valuable guy to have. They've got guys on this roster, on this Cubs roster, who have been in the postseason, or they guy or two with a ring. They're not the same. They don't have the same edge. We clearly have seen they don't bring the same difference. And so I like that he's in the mix. The only thing about it is, and we'll find out, and I don't think this is a ridiculous contract to roll the dice on if it's a dice roll, but he had pretty good numbers last year. He's got terrific career numbers. What's he got left? I don't know. And if he's going to be a part-time enough player that he's not playing much at all, or if he's not producing, then that clubhouse influence isn't going to quite have the same impact, especially for a new guy coming in. So I like what they're trying to do. I like that this guy was there. You could get him on this deal, and you did. Because if he's anything close to what you think he might be, that could make a difference. And it could be a difference a lot more valuable than $6 million.
Yeah, no question about it. So according to Jed, he said, we're pretty much at the point where this group here, that will be the team that we go to Japan with. So now that you see what they've done, they've added a bunch of, I'll call them middling arms, Matthew Boyd, Colin Ray. I like that they've added to their bullpen. I do think they're the best team in the National League, but that does not matter what they look like on paper. The Reds have talent.
The best team in the division.
In the division, yes.
Yeah.
That's what I meant, the division. The Reds have some talent. The Brewers, obviously, are always going to play good baseball. So the Cardinals, I think, are going in the wrong direction. Pirates have good young talent. I do think the pressure, though, is on Jed. He's got to win the division, and he's got to get in the postseason, or he may not be here, right?
Oh, I agree. And I think he told us that on the podcast a few weeks back.
He did. He said absolutely this year should factor into whether I get my contract extended. So if I told you they win the division, they get in the postseason, and they lose in round one, however, somebody pitches well, they play well, but they don't get there, does he get extended?
Well, if they win the division, that means they're going to have home field advantage against a wild card team, right?
Uh-huh.
It's entirely possible that wild card team could have 6-7 more wins than they do and be a better team.
If I told you the Dodgers won the division, the Cubs won the division, and we'll call it the Mets won the division, and the wild card teams are a collection of Padres, Phillies, like you could be taking on Diamondbacks.
If you get the Diamondbacks, you're getting Corbin Burns in game one.
Right. So you could absolutely have your hands full here.
So you could totally lose the first round, even if you win a division. So, yeah. So I would say depending on what that regular season looked like, depending on how you got to the postseason, if you didn't luck out and back in on the last weekend and then get your ass handed to you in the first round against the Arizona Diamondbacks, I'd say you'd have to consider bringing him back. But it might take winning it. It might take winning that series. But if yeah.
I believe if he just wins the division and does nothing else, he's getting a long-term extension.
I will say this, Cap, and I talked to a bunch of people just yesterday, I talked to a bunch of people around the league, both leagues actually. And I think if you're in the National League Central and you have designs on the playoffs, it's division or bust. There's no wild card for you because the Mets got better. Look, I went and I looked at the free agents who left the National League for the American League, who stayed in the National League, who stayed in the American League, and who went the other way, American League to National League. The biggest names that went to the American League from the National League went to the Yankees. So one team picked up those guys. Almost every other big name guy went to the National League. So you like already, yeah, exactly. So Soto goes to the Mets, and the Mets spend more money. They bring Alonso back. They're going to be better. Now, I don't know if they have enough pitching. They got to find a way to get some more pitching. But the Braves are going to be better. The Braves are going to be healthier. The Phillies are going to be just as good. The Dodgers got better. The Giants added $200 million guys. The Diamondbacks added Corbin Burns, and they just were in the World Series 2 years ago. And the Padres didn't trade off some of those pieces they thought we were going to see traded. And so they've still got a star-studded roster. And then the Dodgers got effing better. The Dodgers, who were already, Shohei Ohtani, if they did nothing to that roster, Shohei Ohtani was going to come back as a pitcher this year. And then they added Roki Sasaki, and they added Blake Snell. My God, they got 2 full rotations of veteran, reliable guys if they're healthy. It's stunning how good the National League is, especially on the coasts. The Central didn't do that. Kyle Tucker's the best player added in the division. Terry Francona is the next best addition added to the division. And nobody else did big free agents. Nobody in the division.
Cardinals, I don't think, did anything.
Cardinals shed payroll. Cardinals said, we're going to take a step back before we take another step forward. The Pirates didn't do anything. I do think that, I've been dismissive of them. You probably have. And I certainly was last year, the Brewers. But just talking to the Brewers guys again yesterday, I was reminded, it's not that I'm suddenly sold because I'm talking to them, but I was reminded how well they catch the ball. And that's something that they do better than most teams. And that's going to mean that whatever they do to backfill for the pitching staff, those pitchers will be better because of that. And they have young bats, right? Jackson Chourio, what if he's all of a sudden even better now? Well, that mitigates the loss of Willie Adames.
But you lose your closer too in Devin Williams.
But this goes back to how they've handled that in the past. If they've got arms coming, if they've got enough, if they can do the math on getting enough innings, and then who knows what happens at the trade deadline too, if they decide they're in it. So it's they're a really interesting team to watch. Can they do that again? I'm really skeptical that they can do that again. I mean, come on, that sounds unrealistic. But the fact that they catch the ball so well at so many places is a huge head start.
Okay, before I let you go, the Cubs are going to be right around $200 million, unless there's another move coming that I don't see. $200 million before opening day. The Cardinals are today at 146. The Reds and the Brewers are at 110, and the Pirates are below that. So the Cubs have $50, $60 million advantage over the Cardinals and $90 million over the Reds and the Brewers.
Yeah.
Do you believe Tom Ricketts is being cheap with what they're spending when you look at it relative to their division? They're the financial heavyweight, but they certainly are not spending with the upper echelon teams in Major League Baseball.
Yes. Because I don't think your measure should be just the division. Look, if your measure is the division, then it should be putting your throat on your foot on the throat of the division. And they're not doing that. And they're not keeping up with the other big market teams in the league. I just went over how the National League was already maybe stronger than the American League, and it just got even stronger. So if you've got designs on October, which you should, which he says, then yes, this is on ownership at this point. Look, man, it's been 8 years since they won a playoff game. It's been how many? 4 years, 5 years since they got in?
They got in 2020. Last time that guy had the oil changed on that lawnmower that just went by you.
more than half of the teams in baseball got into the playoffs that year. So that doesn't even count. It was
they were the division winner, just so we're clear.
In a 60-game season by what? One game. So
everybody played 60 games. Don't denigrate my Cubs for getting in and winning the division.
Won like 32 out of 60 games or something like that. It wasn't anything to write home about. They got off to a great start, and they were one of the worst teams in the division after about 2 weeks. Fortunately for them, it was an eight-week season. So, it doesn't count, Cap. It doesn't count. So then you got to go back to 2018. And so that's just, we're making it. 2017, last time they won a game in the postseason. It's time, man. And if you're the Cubs in this division,
beyond time.
It is firmly now. Look, I've been as critical of Jed for some of the decisions that have come down, and I think to this. I mean, I can't wrap my mind around how he handled the Rossi situation. He just did him wrong, and that's just
whoa. Why did he do Rossi wrong? Because he changed managers, and in his mind, he upgraded and paid a guy $8 million a year?
No, because he deceived the hell out of him and everybody else. This was a month after blowing him in the press conference, saying what a great job he did, and then keeping him in the loop for a month on every Zoom call, every bit of planning, and then the day of, and I've got this from multiple sources, on the day of the firing, when Jed was on the ground in Florida, they held a staff Zoom meeting with Rossi part of it as part of planning. And then within hours, the very same day, he knocks on his door. He already knew what was going on.
Nobody in the organization knew they were getting counsel except Jed, Carter, and Tom.
Okay, so here's the thing, Cap. You can do and move that extreme. We saw roughly the same thing happen with Renteria and Madden. Okay, that's Joe Madden and Renteria. And it worked, by the way. They turned a corner. It was the right guy at the right time, the whole thing. So you do this move, it has to be an impact move right away. And what happened? They put the same team on a field. They win the same number of games. They basically hired the same manager for $40 million until he proves otherwise.
No question. But guess what? And I love Rossi. I just ran into him at dinner. Guff and I were at dinner. There he was. Had a great talk with him. He was in town for a wedding. We happened to be at Chicago Cut, my favorite spot. And guess what? Look at the bar and we go, oh, there's Rossi. And we went up and talked to him for quite a while. Had a drink with him. Great. Love talking to him. But guess what?
How's he not on the podcast? How's he not on this podcast with us right now?
He doesn't want to do it. We asked him. Yeah. He's like, I'm not ready. So
because he's not going to tell that story.
No, but the bottom line is Jed felt he could upgrade his team with what he believes to be the best manager in the sport. It didn't work in terms of last season, but he's got to make the moves. He's got to do what he thinks is best. Rossi got paid a lot of money. Rossi, I love Rossi. He's a big boy. That's part of the business.
I completely agree with that. What I don't agree with is, like, first of all, it wasn't a clear cut. You didn't know what it was going to be. I mean, Counsell has a reputation, but he doesn't have any rings as a manager. And so, it's not like you knew. It's not like you could quantify that this was going to do this for you by bringing him in, and you paid him the highest salary ever, the highest contract ever for a manager. And the other thing is, like, this was your handpicked guy who was on your players go into baseball and they get it right away. Go watch the movie Moneyball, and there's a scene that sort of demonstrates this, where guys get it. They understand this is a bottom line business, and it's a business. Maybe I'm getting traded. Maybe I'm getting non-tendered. Maybe I'm getting sent to the minors.
Just tell me.
That's the way this works. Just tell me. Just tell me. I'll figure out how to make my life work. That's the game. That's the business you're in. There's also an element to it, especially when you get be on the player transactions, but there is an element to doing it the right way. Like you said, just tell me. He didn't do that. He didn't give many heads up. And so he got blindsided in a way. He had every right and reason to believe that he was the manager going forward in 2024 because of the way he was treated and what he was told. And then it turned, not because Joe Madden suddenly became available or Joe Torre or Terry Francona suddenly became available, and you get it. You understand that it was because this secretive thing had gone on for this guy that's a good manager, but we'll see. We'll see if he turns out to be a Hall of Fame manager or worth the highest salary in the history of the game. But that doesn't, put it this way, there are people in the game, I can tell you, who consider that dirty dealing, and it does change the way they view that organization. And when that happens, that's going to change the view of people who might be asked to work in that organization in the future. So these are things that matter for having a strong organization and one with credibility and respect.
Gordon, have a great rest of your day. We'll agree to disagree. You're the man.
All right,
I'll talk to you soon.
Enjoy spring training. Enjoy your undefeated team for the next 6 weeks.
Here we go, baby. Let's go.
The next 3 weeks.
Have a great day.
All right. You too.
All right. There he is. That's my partner, Gordon Wittenmeyer. It's another edition of the Cubs Recap Podcast, a presentation of our Recap YouTube channel, and available audio only everywhere you get your favorite podcasts. For Gordon, I'm Cap. Take that.